Cards on the table, I'm a big Star Trek fan, right? You might have noticed. And Star Trek video games have been a thing for a long time. Some are good, some are bad. We're not going to get into the history of it right now. But they're kind of like buses. They kind of show up whenever they want. They don't quite go where you want them to go, and they usually stink. Lo and behold, quite unexpectedly at this Gamescom, two very distinct Star Trek video game projects were announced. And, bonus, a Battlestar Galactica video game as well. So, you know, those of us with the energy, if not the credentials of an adult virgin, are eating pretty good. We can all tell you're eating pretty good, mate. So, as Eurogamer's resident saddle, I'm going to do a reaction to these trailers, have a look at some of the details I think might be pretty key to what these games are going for. I'm just going to have a pretty good time thinking about Star Trek and getting paid for it, which is a thing that happens quite often because I'm anointed. Right, let's do this. So firstly, we've got Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown. Really excited about this. Look at how gorgeous that render of the ship is. It's absolutely beautiful. Enterprise font, interestingly. Caretaker base. Kazon. Bit of a Mass Effect-y sort of map there. Not criticism. Oh my god, I love this. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh my god, right. So I've read a little bit of the press release about this. I mean, it's a bit of a roguelike. We have a journey across the galaxy and you encounter scenarios based on the events of the TV show, but you can choose different outcomes to what happened on the TV series. Now, there was a Walking Dead game recently that operated on the same idea as this that was garbage, but this is a completely different thing. So this looks like a very kind of upmarket version of FTL, a brilliant roguelike sort of space game based on the same idea. You were on a ship, you had a little crew, you were micromanaging what the crew did, taking part in space battles, making decisions, trying to get from one side of the galaxy to the other to avert a war or something. And it was really fun, and for a minute, way back in sort of 2012, 2013, it was the biggest indie game of whichever year it came out. It was huge. And I noticed a lot of the comments where IGN published this were speaking very fondly of FTL in comparison and saying, you know, if it's anything close to how good FTL was, it's going to be a good time. Really authentic stuff, actually. And what's great about that is there's a real marriage there of sort of game concept and the series it's based on, right? The themes of the show and the actual mechanics, because they're doing a choice and consequence game, and Voyager is a brilliant thing to base a choice and consequence video game on. It's because of a choice that Captain Janeway makes in the pilot episode that Voyager gets stranded on the other side of the galaxy. And there are several moments throughout the series where they could get home a lot quicker and they choose not to, because even though they found themselves as Starfleet's only representatives on the other side of the galaxy, the officers feel as though it's still their duty to uphold the principles of Starfleet and the Federation, even though arguably they're not in a position to do that because of their unique predicament, and that's where a lot of the tension on the show comes from.
It is wrong to sacrifice another being to save our own lives. It invaded our ship.
The show's a nice warm blanket of optimistic Clinton-era science fiction.
You can try and stop us from getting to the truth, but I promise you, if you do, I will respond with all the unique technologies at my command. Janeway out.
You can't help but love it, even in how naive it is. But despite all its authenticity, there are a couple of key things that are really missing here. That's not the actual theme music for Voyager, and we don't see any of the characters' faces, which rather suggests that the license for this game might be quite a limited one. They might be quite restricted in what they can actually use from the series. But who knows, this is a teaser trailer, and I think they would be remiss if they didn't manage to get a Voyager actor along to do, you know, a bit of narration or something. But perhaps the lack of the original crew is telling us that this is about you getting to do the Voyager TV show your way. You make the crew, you tell them what to do. Do you have the luxury of keeping your principles if you are in a dire situation where your survival could actually depend on, you might have to screw someone over in a way that you wouldn't if you were back home and everything was lovely and you were in the Federation and backup was a phone call away. When you're in the situation where Voyager is, with the values you were sent out with, is it morally justifiable to hold on to them if it endangers the crew?
But we're destroying their planet, you heard him.
A lot of characters disagreed with each other about that, and infamously, half the crew were terrorists, which is something that they kind of just gloss over after a little while and it becomes not really a thing. But the upshot is, this is a great teaser trailer for that concept, and it's a brilliant concept to base on that TV show. It's such a perfect marriage of gameplay ideas and narrative themes. When does that ever happen? Don't list all the times it's happened in the comments, please. I'm cautiously optimistic because obviously that entire trailer was pre-rendered. I'd be very surprised if any of the gameplay we actually see looks anything like that, really, or anything anywhere as good as that. But it's a really good teaser trailer for selling the idea. I mean, that's more like a pitch video than a trailer. So cautious optimism, I think. It could be absolutely rubbish, but I got real feels watching this beautifully rendered footage, taking me back to evenings on Sky One when I was a teenager, and maybe I'm a total mark, but it looks like they're making good decisions with this project. I just hope it turns out to be good. Moving on. Right, so this is Star Trek Infection VR, and we're already off to a bad start, frankly. Right.
There is a dangerous individual aboard.
I mean, that guy's obviously Vulcan, because he's doing that sort of acting where he's trying to stifle emotion. What? Piss off. Right, okay. Sorry, I've got to go back there. I've got to go back there a wee bit, right? Alright, okay, so you make the little grenade that grows the reeds, whatever, so you can hide in the tall grass, sneak around, attack the zombie, for want of a better word, right? But let's have a look here. Vulcan nerve pinch, fine. Alright. The character has just come from there. In full view of the zombie, you know, chuck the grenades, but you have to sneak right in front. That doesn't make sense as a scenario. If you were making a game trailer and you were trying to showcase a stealth mechanic like this, you would surely set up a more convincing scenario, because you've just walked right in front of her. I don't think any of this has been thought through very well, and this is what these are like the best bits. Gee, okay, all right, let's carry on. He's got an eye in his arm. Hang on a minute. Right, I'm sorry to keep stopping it. I mean, that's like a DS9 sort of Nemesis era phaser, but it looks like they got that out of Home Bargains. That's terrible. Also, this eyeball in the wrist thing. What are you an eyeball in the wrist for? Behind it for checking you've wiped your arse properly, I suppose.
Logic dictates that.
Lots of Vulcan stuff going on here. Mind meld.
Solution.
You love
Interesting.
and you hate, and now you're alone.
Right. I'm sorry, but that looks a bit penis. Now look at this. Alright, okay, so first of all, USS Lumen, that's the wrong typeface. It looks rubbish. Also, this is a Defiant-class. It's actually one of my favourite ships, the Defiant, because it's basically Starfleet's sort of pit bull. It's an organisation like Starfleet realising that they need to be on a war footing. All the design elements of a Starfleet ship are in there. They're just all squished together. That is an open hand. This is a closed fist. The ship is a shotgun. It's a really odd choice of ship for this sort of game. But there's probably a story reason for that, and I'd be quite interested to find out what that is. The typeface is all wrong. That's not a Star Trek font. That's not a Star Trek font. Like, what are you doing? However, in contrast to the Voyager trailer, which is obviously bullshit, it is actually captured in engine, so in that sense a lot more honest. It's not the fundamental concept that I dislike about this. Star Trek does a lot of horror episodes. There are episodes of Star Trek that are just directly riffing on Alien. They put Janeway in a vest and make her all sweaty and make her fight giant space bugs. The idea of exploring a Star Trek environment with that sort of VR immediacy, that immersion, being able to sort of pick things up and manipulate things, I just wish it was for a nicer sort of scenario. But you know, when in doubt, make a zombie thing, right? Zombies have been the refuge of every creator without a budget for decades, so, and this looks very low budget. Just as the TV show, especially in the 90s when they had, like, you know, 9 million episodes a season, you know, hops around genres, does a lot of different things with the format, and I don't see why video game or spin-off projects like this can't also do that. Okay, we're going to do Star Trek and it's a horror. I just think it doesn't look very well executed. It looks cheap, and I don't think it would be right to say, even though the thought occurs that maybe it's because it's a VR game that it looks a bit cheap, because, you know, we've had some incredible looking VR games even on standalone headsets like the MetaQuest 3. I hate being down on it, especially, you know, when it's going to be a while before any of us gets to play it, but oh, it's rough. It looks really rough. We've got time for one more trailer, and this is not Star Trek, but it's Star Trek adjacent. This is Battlestar Galactica Scattered Hopes. And in contrast to the Voyager trailer, this is the music from the show. So this doesn't just evoke the intro sequence of the TV show it's based on. This is kind of a direct riff on it, direct copy of it, really. That haunting music is incredible. There she is, beautiful. Whoa. Whoa. So what's interesting is that you are not in control of the Galactica, because there's been already in the trailer, there's been a bunch of Battlestars that are named different things, right? So I think this is sort of meant to be a bit of a side story, because you're trying to find the Galactica fleet, which is obviously there. All right, so that is the Battlestar Nikopol. I mean, that's Admiral Adama. This is Admiral Adama speaking. That is the Battlestar Tycho. So, which rather implies that you are, like FTL, actually. You're naming your own ship. You're probably naming your own crew. Looks like a bit of a sort of roguelike-y, space adventure-y thing, where, again, bit of choice and consequence going on. Main thing will be space battles, obviously. And the whole wonderful thing, yeah, the Cylons won, yeah, they did, didn't they just? The whole wonderful thing about Battlestar is that there is already kind of like a very unique gameplay loop kind of baked into the TV show, baked into the source material, I think, because a lot of their kind of space battles were, they never won space battles necessarily. They were always sort of frantic dashes for survival, and the idea was, it's like, look, we need to jump into this system, and we need to take out this Cylon refinery, or we need to steal this thing, or we need to rescue this, or whatever. We need to just survive long enough to get the objective done, and then we need to clear off. So it was not about like, this is operation, we're gonna kill everyone. This was like, sort of like, we need this thing and the Cylons are there, so we're gonna have to like hope we don't all die. Again, I love how authentic it seems. It's not as beautifully rendered as the pre-rendered Voyager trailer. It's very much in its own kind of art style, which is absolutely fine. Again, I think this has been made by people who absolutely love the show. Whether they sort of correctly adapt the themes is another thing. Well, there's three very distinct very interesting game projects based on brilliant sci-fi television franchises that I love, that I'm sure you love if you're watching this. And the Battlestar one in particular, I'm very excited about, especially because this is from the studio that made Crying Suns, which is similar, again, sort of space-themed roguelike. You're actually exploring a galaxy in this, and you're trying to uncover the secrets of a long-dead empire. So, you know, like kind of a little bit similar in the sense of like it's an isolated sort of fleet, and you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. But what I think is great about it is that it's clearly a very good marriage of studio expertise and license. These people are clearly passionate about making this sort of stuff, and I imagine when they're making Crying Suns, they're thinking about a lot of other sci-fi stuff. I mean, you know, they literally said Dune Foundation, but I imagine, you know, when you're putting this scenario together, you're thinking of how the space battles played out in the Battlestar Galactica show as well. I imagine that the Battlestar game is what they're building to as a studio. So if you like science fiction and video games, you're always doing well, right? There's always, like, people who make video games are all nerds. They all love the same stuff you do. They're always doing fantasy, they're always doing sci-fi, they're always doing riffs on Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or Star Wars or Dune or whatever it is you're into. There's a flavor of game for the type of gameplay you like, for the type of show you like, for the type of movie you like. Even if all three of these turn out to be a bit pony, at least it's evidence that people are still making this stuff, right? What a good Gamescom for Sados. I love it. That's not derogatory. I'm a Sado. I'm proud of being a Sado, right? If you enjoyed this, I don't believe you, but if you want more op-eds, more previews, more Gamescom coverage, more all the sort of stuff that video games channels do, then please subscribe to Eurogamer. We're all really nice. This is a nice place to hang out. You'll love it.
Now is a great time to score some incredible games through Humble Choice. Live now through to September the 2nd, you can grab Persona 5 Royale, Vanisher's Ghost of New Eden, My Time at Sandrock, and more. Whether you're building your backlog or discovering something new, this is the perfect time to pick up these fan favourites. Plus, every purchase supports a good cause, with this month's featured charity being Donors Choose. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just £11.49 a month.